I never thought I'd be in this situation, pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet. But here I am, trying to make sense of the mess my life has become. I'm Jennifer, 28F, and for as long as I can remember, my mom, Gladys, 55F, has been my best friend, my confidant, and my rock. We've always had a special bond, one that I thought was unbreakable. Growing up in our small town of Millbrook, everyone knew the Johnsons. My dad, Earl, 57M, was a successful real estate developer, known for his charming smile and the way he could close any deal. Mom was the perfect homemaker, always volunteering at school events and hosting neighborhood barbecues. From the outside, we were the family everyone wanted to be. Our house on Maple Street was always bustling with activity. I remember countless afternoons spent in our sunny kitchen, perched on a stool while Mom baked her famous chocolate chip cookies. The smell would waft through the house, drawing Dad from his home office. He'd sneak a warm cookie, wink at me, and ruffle my hair before heading back to work. Those moments felt magical, like we were the stars of our own sitcom. Weekends were for family adventures. We'd pile into Dad's shiny SUV and head off to explore nearby towns or hike in the state park. Mom always packed the best picnics, her homemade fried chicken was legendary in our family. I can still picture Dad trying to fly a kite in the park, his tie flapping in the wind because he'd come straight from a meeting. Mom and I would laugh as the kite dived and swooped, never quite making it into the air. But it wasn't all picture perfect. I remember the late nights when Dad wouldn't come home and Mom would sit by the window, a cold cup of coffee in her hands. She'd brush it off the next morning, saying he was working late on a big project. I believed her because I wanted to, because it was easier than facing the alternative. Everything changed the summer I turned 16. It was a scorching hot day in July, and I had just gotten my learner's permit. I was so excited to practice driving with Mom. But when I bounced into the kitchen, ready to go, I found her sitting at the table, her eyes red and puffy from crying. That's when she told me about the divorce. The next few weeks were a blur. Dad moved out, taking with him the laughter and warmth that once filled our home. The truth came out in bits and pieces, his affair with his young secretary, the secret apartment he kept in the city, the double life he'd been leading for years. I was angry, so angry. At Dad for betraying us, at his secretary for being the other woman, but mostly at myself for not seeing the signs. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the business trips that seemed to multiply, it all made sense now, in the worst possible way. Mom was devastated. She had given up her promising career as a teacher to support Dad and raise me. Now, at 43, she found herself alone, without a job, and with a teenage daughter to support. I watched as she struggled to hold it together, applying for jobs during the day and crying herself to sleep at night. We had to downsize, moving from our beautiful house on Maple Street to a small 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. I started working part-time at the local diner to help with expenses. My friends from the old neighborhood slowly drifted away, uncomfortable with our new circumstances. Through it all, Mom and I leaned on each other. We'd stay up late, talking about everything and nothing. She'd share stories from her college days, dreams she had put on hold to be a wife and mother. I told her about my hopes for the future, my fears about college, my crush on the boy in my calculus class. Those nights, huddled on our second-hand couch with mugs of hot chocolate, were when our relationship truly deepened from mother and daughter to best friends. Dad, meanwhile, became a ghost in our lives. He missed my high school graduation, sending a generic card with a check instead. When I got accepted to State University, it was Mom who cried happy tears and helped me move into my dorm. Dad's congratulations came via a text message 3 days later. Despite the hardships, or maybe because of them, Mom and I grew stronger. I watched in awe as she reinvented herself. She went back to school, juggling online classes with a part-time job as a receptionist. I'd never been prouder than the day she walked across the stage to receive her teaching credential, beaming with accomplishment. Years passed, and things got better. I graduated college with a degree in marketing and landed a job at a small firm in the city. Mom was teaching 3rd grade at the local elementary school and seemed genuinely happy. We still had our weekly dinners, alternating between my small city apartment and her cozy house in the suburbs. Then, about 6 months ago, Mom dropped a bombshell during one of our dinners. She had reconnected with Dad on social media, and they had been talking. She said she had forgiven him and wanted to give their relationship another chance. I was stunned, my fork clattering onto my plate as I tried to process her words. How could she forgive him after everything he put us through? The missed birthdays, the financial struggles, the nights she cried herself to sleep? I reminded her of all the pain he caused, how he abandoned us when we needed him most. But Mom insisted that people change and deserve second chances. Over the next few months, I watched with growing unease as Mom and Dad started dating again. They went to dinner at the Italian place where they had their first date 40 years ago. They took weekend trips to the coast, posting sickeningly sweet couple selfies on Facebook. Mom seemed happy, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that this was all going to end in heartbreak again. Last week, Mom invited me to dinner at her place. When I arrived, I was shocked to see Dad's car in the driveway. I walked in to find them both in the kitchen, Mom stirring a pot of her famous spaghetti sauce while Dad set the table, just like old times. Over dinner, they dropped the bomb. They were getting remarried and wanted my blessing. I felt like the ground had disappeared from under my feet. The spaghetti I had been eating turned to ash in my mouth. I couldn't contain my emotions. Years of pent-up anger and hurt came pouring out. I reminded Dad of how he hurt us, how he missed important milestones in my life. I told Mom I was disappointed that she would let him back in so easily, that she was throwing away all the strength and independence she had worked so hard to build. They tried to explain, saying that they had both grown and changed over the years. Dad apologized for his past actions and said he wanted to make amends. Mom said she believed in second chances and that their love was worth fighting for. But all I could hear was the sound of my world crashing down around me. I left the dinner in tears, ignoring their calls to come back, to talk it through. I drove around aimlessly for hours, replaying the evening in my head. When I finally made it back to my apartment, I collapsed on my bed, feeling betrayed by the one person I trusted most in this world. Now, I don't know what to do. I love my mom, but I can't support this decision. I don't trust my dad and I'm terrified he'll hurt her again. I feel like I'm losing my best friend and the strong, independent woman I looked up to. How do I deal with this? Should I try to accept their decision for Mom's sake? Or should I stand my ground and risk damaging my relationship with her? The thought of having to play happy families with the man who abandoned us makes me feel physically ill. But the thought of losing my relationship with Mom is equally devastating. I'm torn and confused, and I could really use some advice. How do I protect my mom without pushing her away? How do I deal with having Dad back in our lives after all these years? Is it possible to move past all the hurt and anger, or am I justified in feeling this way? Any insights would be appreciated because right now, I feel completely lost. Update 1, it's been a month since my last post, and to say it's been a roller coaster would be an understatement. Thank you all for your advice and support. Your words have been a lifeline during this tumultuous time. After the disastrous dinner, I spent a week avoiding Mom's calls and messages. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office and volunteering for every project that came up. But avoidance can only last so long, especially when you're dealing with Gladys Johnson, determined mother and experienced third-grade teacher. She showed up at my apartment one Sunday morning, armed with a bag of fresh bagels and a determined look in her eye. I opened the door, still in my pajamas, hair a mess, and she simply said, "We need to talk, sweetheart." We sat at my tiny kitchen table, the same one she had helped me pick out when I first moved to the city. As we spread cream cheese on our bagels, Mom started to speak. She apologized for springing the news on me the way she did, acknowledging that it was a lot to process. Then, she shared her side of the story, and I mean really shared. For the first time, I heard about the depth of pain she experienced during the divorce. She told me about nights spent staring at the ceiling, wondering where she had gone wrong. She spoke about the humiliation of running into Dad's girlfriend at the grocery store, of having to ask for help to pay bills she once handled with ease. But then she told me about her journey of healing. She had gone to therapy, something I hadn't known about. For years, she had worked on processing her anger and hurt, on rebuilding her self-esteem. She explained that forgiving Dad wasn't about forgetting the past, but about freeing herself from the anger and resentment she had carried for years. Holding on to that anger was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, she said, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I had to let it go, for my own sake. She also revealed that Dad had been in therapy too. Apparently, the failure of his second marriage had been a wake-up call. He had worked on understanding his past behaviors and making amends. Mom assured me that they had many long, difficult conversations about the past and their expectations for the future. As I listened, I felt my anger slowly giving way to confusion. This wasn't the story I had told myself about their reconciliation. I had imagined Mom falling back into old patterns, Dad sweeping in with grand gestures and empty promises. The reality was far more complex. Still, I had my doubts. Years of hurt don't disappear overnight. I asked Mom if she would be willing to postpone the wedding for a while, to give me time to process everything and maybe try to rebuild some sort of relationship with Dad. To my relief, Mom agreed without hesitation. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand, saying, "Your feelings are important to me, sweetie. We don't want to rush into anything that would damage our relationship. You take all the time you need." Over the next few weeks, Mom arranged for Dad and me to meet for lunch. The first meeting was at a neutral location, a cafe downtown that neither of us had been to before. I arrived early, and nearly bolted when I saw him walk in. He looked older than I remembered, gray streaking his once dark hair. He smiled nervously as he sat down, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the dad I remembered from my childhood. It was awkward at first. We hadn't had a real conversation in years. But slowly, we started talking. He asked about my job, and I found myself sharing stories about difficult clients and exciting projects. He told me about his work, how he had scaled back to focus more on sustainable development projects. Then, he apologized. Not a generic, blanket apology, but a specific acknowledgement of his failures as a father. He admitted that he had been selfish and cowardly, and that he regretted the pain he had caused us. He talked about his therapy journey and how he had worked on becoming a better person. I listened, my emotions swinging between lingering anger and a desperate desire to believe him. But I made it clear that words weren't enough. I needed to see consistent actions over time to even consider trusting him again. We agreed to meet regularly, just the two of us, to try and rebuild some sort of relationship. It's been hard and sometimes uncomfortable, but I'm trying to keep an open mind. As for Mom and Dad's relationship, they're still together but have put the wedding plans on hold. They're taking things slow, which gives me some comfort. Mom assures me that they're in couples therapy, working through their issues in a healthy way. We've started doing family dinners once a month. The first one was tense, with conversation stilted and forced. But each time, it gets a little easier. Last week, we even managed to laugh together over a story Mom told about her students. I'm still not 100% on board with the reconciliation, but I'm trying to be supportive of Mom's happiness. I can see the joy in her eyes when she talks about Dad, a lightness that I haven't seen in years. It's a work in progress, and I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm focusing on strengthening my relationship with Mom and cautiously getting to know Dad again. It's not easy, but I'm hopeful that with time, things will get clearer. Thank you all again for your support. Your stories of similar experiences have helped me feel less alone in this situation. I'll keep you updated as things progress. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some developments. Life has a funny way of surprising you, and these past few months have certainly been full of surprises. The family dinners have become a regular thing now, happening every other week. They're still a bit awkward, but definitely less tense than before. Dad has been consistently showing up, not just physically, but emotionally too. He asks about my work, remembers details about my friends, and even helped me troubleshoot an issue with my car last month. Speaking of cars, that leads me to a significant event that happened recently. Last month, Dad asked if he could take me out for lunch, just the two of us. I was hesitant but agreed. He picked me up in his car, and as we drove, I was suddenly hit with a vivid memory. I was 15, and Dad was teaching me how to drive in an empty parking lot. I was nervous, gripping the steering wheel too tight, but Dad was patient. He talked me through each step, his voice calm and reassuring. When I finally managed to park between the lines, he high-fived me with such enthusiasm that we both burst out laughing. Sitting in his car again, all these years later, I felt a lump in my throat. So much had changed since that day, but here we were, trying to find our way back to some version of that father-daughter relationship. At lunch, Dad handed me an envelope. He said he had written down all the things he wanted to say to me but couldn't find the right words in person. With shaky hands, I opened it and started reading. The letter was long and emotional. Dad acknowledged every important event he had missed in my life, my high school graduation, my college acceptance, my first job. He expressed deep regret for not being there and for the pain he had caused. He wrote about watching my life unfold through social media posts and second-hand stories from Mom, feeling like a spectator in his daughter's life. What struck me most was when he wrote about how proud he was of the woman I had become, despite his absence. He said that was a testament to Mom's strength and my own resilience. He mentioned specific achievements, the marketing campaign I led last year, the half marathon I ran, even the container garden I started on my apartment balcony. I was surprised he knew about these things, and touched that he had been paying attention. I won't lie, I cried reading that letter. It didn't magically fix everything, but it was a start. I thanked Dad for his honesty and told him I needed time to process everything. As for Mom and Dad's relationship, they're still taking things slow. The wedding plans are still on hold, and Mom assures me they're not rushing into anything. They're focusing on rebuilding their relationship on a stronger foundation. I've also been spending more one-on-one time with Mom. We've started a tradition of monthly spa days where we can relax and talk openly. During one of these days, Mom shared more about her journey of forgiveness and healing. She told me about the day she finally decided to let go of her anger. It was at a yoga retreat she had treated herself to for her 50th birthday. As she sat in meditation, she realized that holding on to her resentment was only hurting herself. It was like putting down a heavy backpack I didn't even know I was carrying, she said. Mom helped me understand that forgiving Dad was more about her own peace than about him. She also admitted that reconciling with him wasn't an easy decision. She had doubts and fears, just like I did. But she decided that the possibility of happiness was worth the risk. While I'm still cautious, I can see positive changes. Dad has been consistent in his efforts to make amends and rebuild our relationship. He's been showing up for family events, remembering important dates, and making an effort to get to know the adult me. Last week, he surprised me by showing up at my office with lunch. As we sat in the park across the street, eating sandwiches and watching pigeons, it felt nice. Not perfect, not like it was before, but a step in the right direction. I'm not ready to fully embrace their reconciliation yet, but I'm more open to the possibility. Seeing Mom happy and Dad making genuine efforts has softened my stance a bit. There are still moments when old hurts surface, but I'm learning to address them openly instead of letting them fester. It's still a journey, and I'm taking it one step at a time. I'm focusing on healing my own wounds and rebuilding relationships at my own pace. Thank you all for your continued support and advice. I'll update again if there are any significant changes. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share where things stand now. Life has a way of moving forward, whether we're ready or not, and these past months have been no exception. The biggest news is that Mom and Dad have decided to renew their vows rather than have a big wedding. They've planned a small, intimate ceremony with just immediate family and a few close friends. When they told me about it over dinner last month, I was surprised to find that I felt okay with the idea. Not ecstatic, not upset, just okay. And maybe that's progress in itself. Over the past months, I've seen consistent effort from both of them. Dad has continued to show up, not just for big events but for small, everyday things too. He was there to help me move to a new apartment, offering to paint the living room and assemble furniture. He even remembered my half-birthday, something we used to celebrate when I was a kid. He showed up with cupcakes from my favorite bakery and a gift card to the bookstore I love. Mom has been my rock through all of this. She's given me space when I needed it and has been there to talk things through when I was ready. Our spa days have become a sacred time for us to connect and be honest with each other. During our last spa day, she confided that while she's happy with Dad, she sometimes still feels scared about fully trusting him again. Her honesty made me realize that she's not blindly rushing into this, she's making a conscious choice, eyes wide open. I've also continued my own journey of healing. I started journaling, which has helped me process my feelings. I've had some breakthrough moments where I've realized that holding on to anger was hurting me more than anyone else. It's not easy, and there are still days when I struggle, but I'm working on it. Last month, I agreed to go on a weekend trip with Mom and Dad. We went to the lake house where we used to spend summers when I was a kid. It was the first time we'd spent that much time together in years. There were moments of tension, like when Dad made a joke about the good old days and I snapped at him. But there were also moments of laughter and genuine connection. We went hiking, played board games, and even attempted to make s'mores, which ended with Dad setting a marshmallow on fire, just like he used to. During that trip, I saw how Mom and Dad interacted. It wasn't the idealized version of love I remembered from childhood, but something more real and mature. They disagreed sometimes, but I watched them work through it with respect and understanding. One night, I overheard them talking on the porch, working through a disagreement about future plans. They listened to each other, compromised, and ended the conversation with a hug. It was a small moment, but it stuck with me. I'm not saying everything is perfect now. There are still moments when old hurts surface, and I'm still working on fully trusting Dad. But I can honestly say that I'm in a much better place than I was when I first wrote that post. Mom and Dad's vow renewal is next month. They asked if I would stand up with them during the ceremony. After some thought, I agreed. It feels right, a symbol of our family healing and moving forward together. I'm helping Mom pick out her dress, and Dad asked for my opinion on his vows. It's strange and beautiful all at once. To everyone who's followed my story and offered advice, thank you. Your support has meant more than you know. This journey has been difficult, but it's also taught me a lot about forgiveness, growth, and the complexity of love and family. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm facing it with hope and an open heart. There will probably be more challenges ahead, more moments of doubt and hurt. But I feel better equipped to handle them now. Thank you all again for being part of this journey with me.